Recently, my family just finished up another soccer season. We've got a lot of great soccer memories over the past couple of years, but my most favorite soccer memory was from my oldest son's very first real soccer practice, when he showed me how a leader walks. Want to learn what he showed me? Find out later in this video. Hi everybody, I'm Matt Lyles, and here's another discussion on how you can be a more effective you. My oldest son had his very first soccer practice a couple of years ago. Have you ever seen 4 to 6-year-olds play soccer? It's not FIFA. Someone's going to sit down playing in the dirt. Someone's going to be chasing butterflies. Someone's going to have suddenly forgotten how to run. Someone's going to run the wrong way. Someone's going to excitedly kick the ball into the goal, but it's the wrong goal. And at some point, eventually, someone's gonna cry. Here's a PSA, parents. Don't judge kids crying at soccer practice. It's going to happen. If it's not your kid crying today, it may be them the next time. It's just kids being kids. One boy showed up and began crying even before the first practice began. No one's sure why. He's probably not sure why. New environment, new authority figures, new people, it was probably scary. Eventually, the coach called everybody over to the far end of the field to start practice. But this boy didn't move. He just sat on the bench whimpering. So I motioned to my son and called him over and said, "Hey, why don't you go help that kid out?" Now I just assumed my son would simply nudge the boy and say, "Hey, come on, let's go," and then run off onto the field. That alone is probably more than what most others would have done. But here's where my son showed me what a leader does. He walked over to the boy, gently grasped his arm, and pulled him up off the bench. He put one arm on the boy's back and slowly walked with him to the team, keeping his one hand on the boy's back to let him know that he was there with him the whole time. And as they were walking, I couldn't make out every word my son said, but I heard him say phrases like, "Hey, it's going to be fun. We're going to get to do this. We're going to get to do that." By the time they made it over to the team, the tears had stopped, the boy was ready to play, and for the next hour, he had a tear-free blast. Now, my son didn't have to do anything, but the simple act of walking with someone helped a scared boy get comfortable, get onto the field, and actually have fun. That made me recall some of the best leaders I know and how they help their teams to move forward. Now, when you're leading a team, you have a few options when you're trying to help your team move forward. You can move forward and direct your team to follow along behind you, or you can direct your team to move forward as you stay back, or you can walk along with your team as the team moves forward. The best leaders are able to recognize what the situation calls for, and a lot of times that means walking with your team. Now, you can't walk with your team every time, and sometimes you even need to give your team space to be able to grow. But your team needs to know that you have their back and that you're there to walk with them when the situation calls for it. What does it mean to walk with your team? It depends on the situation, and it can depend on the individual team member. The best way to understand that is to get to know your team. Common sense, right? Unfortunately, that's not common practice. Unfortunately, few leaders actually take the time to fully invest in knowing their teams. Strong leaders take the time to fully understand and appreciate every aspect of their team members. Their hopes, their dreams, their beliefs, their passions, their strengths, their weaknesses, their challenges, their needs. And bonus, when you get to know your team members, they'll want to get to know you too. Winning all around. Want help understanding how you can walk with your team? Here's 3 ideas to get you started. Number 1, have their backs. Your team needs to know that you support them no matter what. Ask them questions. Where do they feel like they're winning? Where do they feel like they're challenged? What barriers are they facing? When you find out as much as you can about your team and you act on that knowledge, your team knows you care and they'll trust you even more. Number 2, include your team in planning. What's more effective? Creating a plan by yourself and then handing it over for your team to execute? Or including your team in the planning process from the very beginning? If you've been in either of these situations, then you already know the answer. When someone's included in the process to develop the plan, the mission, the goals, they're much more likely to be invested in accomplishing them. And when you include your team in the planning process, they're much more likely to think through solutions to possible roadblocks instead of complaining about them later on. Number 3, stay visible. If your team can't see you, then you're not walking with them. If you're always hiding in your office, or even if you're always out of the office, away from your team, you can't assume that the work will just get done in your absence. In fact, go ahead and assume that your team won't be aligned, your team will face challenges that you're not even aware of, and the work won't get done in the way that you intend. You've got to stay visible with constant face-to-face discussions. When you remain visible, it's much easier to give those constant reminders to your team on the team's plan, mission, and goals. And it's much easier to give and receive real-time feedback. Now, don't get me wrong, walking with your team isn't the only way to be a great leader. There's lots of aspects that go into understanding how to intentionally lead your team. But once you learn how and when to walk with your team, you'll be a much more effective leader. If you like this video, then please hit like and comment below. Tell me what you'll do this week to start walking with your team. And if there's somebody you think can use this video, please share it with them. In the meantime, be on the lookout for more videos where I share lessons on how you can be a more effective you.